While in graduate school, with only my dissertation left to finish, I gave birth to my twin sons, Jared and Jaron. As a single mother, the first few years of their lives was a total blur of diapers, and bottles, and teaching, and grading papers, doing research, oh, so many play dates, carpool, bills, and much less of what was actually needed, sleep. Late one Sunday morning, as I faced a pressing dissertation due date, I needed to write and send a draft to my committee by the next day. Without a sitter, I headed to my office with the boys for what I honestly believed would be just a couple of hours. I was equipped with apples and crayons and blankets and Cheez-Its and, of course, their favorite Barney VHS tape as we trekked up the 4 flights of stairs. Some 12 hours later, I was finally headed out of the office. I had 2 car seats, 2 tired and sleepy little boys. I had my mommy bag, my dissertation draft, and an onslaught of tears drenching my face, fueled by guilt and doubt and absolute exhaustion. As we headed out in the middle of the night, I said a prayer and we crossed the dark street to the only car left in sight. I looked around to make sure no one was coming, and I quickly locked in the car seats. I strapped in the boys, and we headed home after a quick stop at the local drive-thru. Once there, I bathed the boys, I took a quick shower, and with it now being close to midnight, I put them in my bed, I hugged them tight, and I cried myself to sleep. All throughout the next day, and quite honestly, many, many others, I would relive those 12 hours always with a twinge of sadness and a twinge of guilt. I couldn't figure out why that looping soundtrack was playing in my mind, but it was taking a huge emotional and physical toll. I was constantly beating myself up, thinking that I didn't measure up to some unrealistic notion of motherhood and womanhood. I had really thought from that vantage point, all there was weakness and failure. And that's a challenge many of us struggle with. As an educator and as a researcher, I've been wondering over the past 25 years, why do we have the tendency to view ourselves from a weak or negative perspective? Why do we unduly focus our attention on our imperfections or perceived shortcomings, or actually see something that doesn't actually exist at all? This is what I had been doing, being on a perpetual hamster wheel, driving myself into the ground. I wanted to know, why do we look at our lives or the lives of others from a prism of lack, a prism of failure, a prism of deficiency, where we see situations from an extreme and limited binary, where we focus on what is broken instead of what is working, or where we see self-doubt instead of self-determination, where we view our lives, or even the lives of others, from a lens of personal weakness instead of personal strength. This is a deficit lens. In her seminal book, Other People's Children, Cultural Conflict in the Classroom, noted scholar Lisa Delpit discusses deficit thinking beyond the personal realm particularly as it relates to educational equity and social justice. Her research illustrates how the presumed deficits and pathologies of historically underrepresented and marginalized and racialized students are intentionally perpetuated to justify educational disparities. These deficit narratives suggest that some children lack the discipline or the motivation to excel, or that somehow they are culturally depraved and have limited intelligence, causing us to see them as other people's children, absolving us from the love and the care and compassion we would have for our own. This way of thinking leads to negative stereotypes and deep-seated implicit and explicit bias. From birth, our culture, the media, our personal experiences, and other social influences can instill in us these thoughts and fears, which can become entrenched over time. And we have to require ourselves to confront and, when needed, shift our primary lens. So if we look back on that day with my boys in the office, my lens was built on very narrow cultural and gender and professional expectations. I had allowed some interpretation of what it meant to be an excellent mother or intelligent professional to distort my vision and to sabotage my value and my worth. And I lived with that feeling for a very long time. Now, some years later, my boys and I were talking about the many times they had to go to work with mommy, and we were reminiscing. And inevitably, that proverbial day came up. And quite honestly, instantly, those old feelings of fear and guilt tried to stir up in me. But surprisingly, my boys' recollection of that day was quite different than my own. They had remembered mommy intermissions, oh, so many mommy intermissions. They also had remembered coloring competitions, office decorations, which, by the way, are still all over my office. And they also remembered Barney. They said, "It was okay, Mom, you were working." And then they said three pivotal and profound words. We had fun. And as I really listened and finally heard them, tears began to form, but this time they were tears of healing, as the guilt and as the sadness faded away. Their gift of understanding and their gift of love caused me to reframe the situation and to see it as an asset. Now, as somebody who is nearsighted and can't see anything from a distance, their words were like going to the optometrist. And you know, when you have the eye apparatus and they click it back and forth, it was like finally finding the lens that gave me clear vision. And once I got rid of that distorted deficit lens, I realized that as a strong single mother of two wonderful young black men, I was modeling motivation and resilience and perseverance and hard work. And that I, despite the challenges and the circumstances, that I needed to value all of our experiences. That feeling was wonderful, and it was liberating. So now what do we need to do? We need to commit ourselves to challenge this tendency toward deficit thinking. We need to adjust the soundtrack that can play in our mind. It has been said the person throughout our lives with whom we will have the most conversations is ourself. So today, I want you to ask, How do I see myself? Is my view filtered through a distorted deficit lens? If so, have I allowed it to hinder or to undermine me? And if you've said yes to any of those questions, then I want you to gift yourself a set of corrective lenses. Lenses that affirm you, lenses that see all of your strengths and all of your contributions. Lenses, even though you have challenges, will lift you up. Lenses that will allow you to see all of your splendidness. So today, when I envision my boys in my office, this is what I see. And you can see some of the art. Can't see quite all of it. And I won't tell you all of the many hours accumulated. But I see two happy and two blessed 18-year-old high school seniors, because now I see clearly. Thank you.